ADHD reWired, episode 484. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD reWired. Today's guest is Kim Alexander. Kim Alexander is a clinical social worker turned stay-at-home mom. After being diagnosed with ADHD last year at the age of 53, she enrolled in ADHD reWired's coaching and accountability groups and is currently involved as a peer mentor, which we call ADDmin with 2 Ds. In between parenting 3 kids who all have ADHD, Kim enjoys storytelling, political activism, and skiing or anything involving snow. She is also a competitive acapella singer who has won 3 international medals with her show chorus. Kim, welcome. I don't even want to say welcome to the podcast. Welcome to my office.
Nice to be here.
It's nice to have you here. It is always a treat when I get to have someone actually in person and I get to look at them not just on a camera and on a computer screen, but the real you. All right. So let's where do you want to start with your story?
If it's okay, I'd like to start with reading my Dear ADHD letter, the first one that I ever wrote. It's from April of last year when I went through the coaching and accountability groups. And it kind of takes you through the process of what my life is like before I knew I had ADHD.
Awesome. Let's do it. So this is one of the exercises that we do in our coaching groups. So go ahead.
Dear ADHD, hi there, stranger. You've been with me my whole life, yet I haven't known you. Growing up, I had never even heard of you, and I called myself a daydreamer. In college and grad school, I learned you existed, but I didn't know you were a part of me. I called myself a procrastinator, a perfectionist, and a lousy time manager. In my 30s, others pointed you out to me, but I denied you. I called myself scatterbrained and lazy and irresponsible. In my 40s, when my kids were diagnosed and treated, I realized you were with me, but I minimized you, and I thought I was strong enough to ignore you. As I suffered through the same struggles over and over, I called myself a disappointment and a failure. Now, I'm eager to get to know you. I'm excited to see the changes that are going to happen in my life as I learn how to work with you. And I call myself brave.
That was lovely.
Yeah.
How did I feel reading that? That was how long? When did you write that one?
Almost a year ago.
How did that feel?
I feel compassionate towards my former self. I wish I could reach back in time and tell her that all the things that she thought was her character were really ADHD related, and that she didn't have to just kind of buck up and try harder, that there were easier ways to go about that.
So what was it that sort of brought you back to seek out the diagnosis and start kind of working on your ADHD?
I kind of figured out when I first filled out the forms for my 13-year-old, and I saw the section on inattention that the parents, does your kid have blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, wow, I have like all those. And I got down to the hyperactive section and I was like, no. And I thought maybe most adults would just answer these questions the same way. And I handed it to my neurotypical husband and he went down the inattentive column and he's like, no. And he got to the hyperactivity section. He's like, yes, yes, yes. So I joke that he's the H to my ADD. But that was when I realized, like, okay, this diagnosis would really fit for me. But I'd been told I'd been told by doctors that most adults with ADHD don't need medication or because they've learned enough coping skills. And I thought, okay, I just need to use better coping skill. I will try harder.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, it's not really bad enough because I didn't know all the things that were, that's ADHD. And so is that. And so is I didn't recognize all the places it was showing up in my life because I was calling it by different names. I think the time I realized that it was bad enough, it was within the past 10 years. The house we lived in North Carolina before I moved here to the Chicago area, I flooded it because I overflowed the bathtub. We had a downstairs master bathroom, and I'd set that, and I was busy mom doing million multitasking or trying to, and turn it on, and it takes 5 minutes I had a nice big tub. It takes 5 minutes. I didn't want to stand there. So I'm just going to do a couple of quick tasks. And by the time I remembered that I turned it on, it was flooded the bathroom and the bedroom and almost into the hardwoods in the hall, which the entire rest of our downstairs was all hardwood. So it was like, oh, thank God, because then we would have had all that replaced. So, but we had to have our bedroom carpet and the bathroom flooring, and it was an insurance claim and the deductible. And so it was like, okay.
And a headache.
I'm never doing that again. And I made it like a year. And then I did it again. The phone rang. And I answered it, and I was talking on the phone, and it was a particularly stressful day. And that time it made it onto the hardwood, and it was a $25,000 insurance claim. And we lost our USAA insurance from my husband's military service. We lost our USAA insurance over it.
Whoa.
That was when I decided it was bad enough. But I still didn't do anything about it. I just thought about doing something.
How did your husband react?
I mean, he was really frustrated. He's not going to yell at me. He knew that I felt worse about it than he could ever make me feel. But he went and bought these little water sensors that like scream and he hung them over the edge of the bathtub, and you put them on the floor of the bathroom.
That's actually pretty smart.
Yeah. Adaptation or accommodations, right?
Absolutely. I've been thinking about stuff around my house, things like, because who knows? We got to adapt, our environment to who we are.
Yeah. And now I never step away from a running bathtub unless I have a timer with me. And even then, I just try to just do something that's right there in the bathroom for 5 minutes.
Because a third time, if that happens, man.
Yeah, when I finally got around to doing something about it was just this past year. After we moved right at the beginning of the pandemic to a new area, and we didn't know people here. We didn't have any family here, and it was the middle of 2020.
Yeah.
So even like meeting neighbors in the warm weather, but then as soon as it got cold, it's like you couldn't invite anybody over for dinner. You couldn't go. It was not a good year. I've been through depression before, but this is only like the second time in my life when it's been a major depression. And so I knew I needed to get on medication, and I knew I needed to get back into therapy. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take care of myself. I got the depression dealt with. Once you lift a layer of the onion, you discover what other layers are underneath.
There's a whole salad under there.
Yeah. And there were things that I had thought that was mixed in with my kind of dysthymic. I know it's not in the DSM anymore, but that type of kind of low level ongoing depression. I had thought that things that were really my ADHD were that. And probably they're intertwined, because when you can't do the things you want to do, it's depressing.
Yeah, it's frustrating for sure.
So, and I just, in the move and the years of staying at home with kids and the being in I just got to a place where I had just lost all my confidence. I had lost all my mojo. I just thought, I can't even make myself do basic things. And I wondered if I would ever get back to a point in my life of like full functioning like I used to have when I was younger, when I was in school and when I had structure in my life before all the structure fell out. I wondered if I could ever get back to that place. I told my therapist, I think now that my depression's under control, I really think the other thing I struggle with is ADHD. And she said, "Really? What makes you think that? I don't see it." And I started telling her about stuff and including the bathtub thing. After I talked for a little bit, she's like, "Oh, yeah, you do. Yep, you definitely do. Okay." So apparently it's not like in my presentation.
Right, and as for if you have more of an inattentive presentation, it won't be like probably the biggest hallmark thing is sort of that just like spacing out. But that doesn't show up for everyone, because we tend to internalize the inattentiveness, right? It's what's going on under the hood.
Well, and I think like a lot of people, I can mask pretty darn good for an hour at a time.
That's when I saw scrolling on Facebook this morning while I was drinking my coffee, and I saw this really funny meme. It was a side by side. It was a Thomas the Train socks,
Oh,
and it had so on the left side like this is what the mask I put on to people. It was just a regular like Thomas the Train socks. And then it was the next to it was the sock inside out and how weird like it looked when it was inside out. And, like, but this is how I actually feel. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic.
yeah. Right. This is what's going on the inside of
Like
what
this
you
looks
see.
like strung out and like it's like, oh God. Because it is. It's exhausting. It's exhausting when
Right.
especially when it, kind of looks like we got our shit together, but we don't,
Yeah.
and it's interesting, in my role when we're starting in groups, like one of the first things I need to tell people is like, I don't have it all figured out. It's okay to not have it all figured out. Like we're learning together. And so much of success and happiness, I think, when you have ADHD is learning how to get back up and being able to sort of laugh at the mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's do this. Let's like take a quick break right now. And I know you got a bunch of more stories to share with us.
I do.
All right. So we're gonna take a quick break and we will be right back. Registration for our summer coaching and accountability groups is going on now. Don't miss your chance to join us this summer. Space is limited, and find out how you can get a $500 discount off of registration. Go to coachingrewired.com to learn more. That's coachingrewired.com. Do you have a vision of where you want to be and want to fast track your progress to reach your next milestones? Or are you unsure of what the future holds and want to gain clarity and get unstuck and make forward momentum on the things that are most important to you? Your support can start here with ADHD reWired's award-winning coaching and accountability groups. There's just over 1 week left in the month of May, which means the start of our summer season of coaching and accountability groups is coming up soon. Our groups are designed to show our members what is possible for their lives and how they can achieve their wildly important goals without having to do them in the hardest way possible. We've seen members improve their relationships, change careers, complete PhD programs, launch their own businesses, finish major home renovations, do cross-country moves, and so much more. So if you've been wondering what group coaching can do for you, don't wait. Join us for our summer season of coaching and accountability groups by going to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our summer interest list. Also, get a $500 discount on select sections. See the website for details. Once you've added your name, we'll keep you updated by email for dates for our upcoming summer registration events and what you'll need to know so you can join us. That's coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. All right, we are back with Kim Alexander. All right, so it's been an eventful year for you.
Yes, definitely.
You went through your coaching program.
Yep.
You've done some really major goals that you set out to hit. So tell us more. Take us more on the journey of this last year.
So this past year has been truly life-changing. I think I came out of the accountability and coaching 10 weeks thinking like I just had a fire hose sprayed in my face and I can't absorb all that. And other people were working on things like career related and these huge job tasks that were like they were very science-y or executive-y, and I was working on trying to get up in the morning, trying to go to bed at night, trying to make myself go for a walk. It was just like I really picked the smallest domino concept seriously, and I was going for those little
You ran with it,
dominoes.
though.
And I
And
did.
you weren't the only one who was working on that kind of stuff.
Yes, that's true. But I sometimes compared myself and thought, "Oh," but it was like, "No, I need to build this foundation and do hard things." Like, at the time I signed up, I wasn't even sure I could get myself to show up on schedule and be on time, and oh my gosh, my timeliness I was early showing up today. I'm usually now early or on time to almost everything. And now when I'm not, it bothers me.
Yeah.
Because I do those things now that I didn't do before.
Like what?
Plan my day the day before and write things down on a schedule and block it out for me, it has to be on paper. Otherwise, time doesn't really seem real to my brain if I see it on a screen. I have things on my calendar like OTD, which means out the door. And I look up Google Maps the day before to see how much time and what's my OTD, and my BIC time, which means butt in chair. And to be on time as an admin for the peer mentor role, we're supposed to be there 15 minutes before. And so for me, that means my butt and chair time is 15 minutes before that. And I have this, what I call my pre-game checklist on a piece of paper that's right in front of where I'm looking, as I sit at my desk at home. And it's got all the things that I need to do to be ready, including have a sweater because it's cold in that room in the house, and get my water or coffee, or make sure I've taken care of the dog, and all that mess that it's I don't have to be oh shoot, did I forget this? Did I do this? I'm going to look at the list and I scan through it and be I did everything except that one thing. Okay, got it. And my life is, I'm just figuring out my brain and really being intentional, figuring out what makes my life more manageable. It's been, I can't even say how huge it's been.
So tell me, what are some of the other things that you feel through the course of this last year, after going through ARC, do you feel is just different in your life?
One thing I notice, and apparently other people notice too, because I asked my A team, I have an accountability team that was ongoing ever since I went through my season, and they're amazing. I asked them, what do they see in my journey? One thing that they reflected back to me was just so much better self-acceptance. If I haven't followed through on something, I don't come in with all this, I'm so sorry, and lots of reasons and explaining, the please don't judge me, and I'm not judging myself. I'm much more accepting, and I feel so much more comfortable. I'm much more aware of the whole judger mindset versus I think that's from the Change Your Questions, Change Your Life book.
Yep.
The judger mindset versus the questioning and the growth mindset. And I'm all about the growth mindset. And I think that's something that's just really gotten deeply internalized in me. I'm much more self-compassionate. And I think that reflects in self-compassion towards others. I do things differently with my kids.
What do you do?
Even using little concepts like point of performance. There was something that my daughter needed to, I get these little text messages from the orthodontist that my daughter needs to change her aligners for the week. And I would have just texted it to her remember when you get home, they said you can move on to the next set, so change them. And instead, I just went up and put a sticky note on her bathroom mirror, because it's not going to do any good to send her this while she's at school, because she has an ADHD brain. So it's not going to do that, set her up like that, and then be well, why didn't you remember? I understand myself better, so I understand her better. And I can parent in a way that is going to be kinder and more effective.
How do you think your own sort of self-acceptance and self-compassion has changed the relationship that you have with your kids?
I think I was pretty good at giving that to them, I think I was the hardest on myself. I think a lot of moms are like that, probably.
I think dads too.
Yeah. But
especially when we're being intentional and are trying to be present, and when we're aware of the chasm between here's how we want to show up and here's how we realize we are showing up. At least for me, that's something that I can be hard on myself about.
and because the two that are still at home are adolescents-ish, they're not always open to me sharing. I mean, I just want to share all the tips and strategies and all this stuff, right? And they're just like, whoa. And so I have to hold back my own floodgates of enthusiasm with that and meet them where they are. But I'm modeling the heck out of it. So I feel like at least they are watching me change, and they're seeing the intentionality and the effort that I'm putting in for changing me. Then they know that's available for them too.
It's probably a more effective approach for when you're working with your own kids who are teens, because when I used to have my clinical practice, I would tell parents that, the good news and the bad news is your kids are teens. The good news is it just takes time.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to be assholes forever. Right. And it's especially when you're to have a whole household of neurodivergent, people. Part of that too is that self-awareness piece for yourself as a parent, right? And then also that awareness of teens developmentally, they need to differentiate.
Yes.
They're we hope that they're not going to be like big assholes to us as parents, but part of that's kind of normal. And if we can say, okay, this is now, and if we could sort of hold a little bit of space for it, still having boundaries and saying, nope, this is not okay, right? But not getting into that, you have to do it this way, but holding space. And I think one of the things that I want to try to make sure that I do as a parent is instill a foundational belief for my son that he will have the ability to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So it's it's okay if he doesn't do it right. I believe that you're going to learn from that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So are you finding that you're showing up more in that way with your kids too?
Yeah. And I do things like start conversations differently.
Yeah, how so?
Instead of I got this email from your teacher saying you missed several assignments. We need to deal with that. My daughter, who's 17, can get pretty defensive. I mean, who doesn't, right? But I found I'm like, okay, I want to talk to you about something. But before I even tell you what it is, I want to let you know I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm not saying I disapprove. I'm not saying it's not oh, I'm sorry, I'll do better. It's just I want to get curious together about what's going on with this and see how we can think together about steps to take to solve it.
You're taking a coach approach.
Yes. And it freaking works, right? Who knew? You probably did.
Well, but it's fun when the stuff that you learn about working and then you try it yourself, oh, this stuff actually does work.
Yeah. And then she'll say, oh, I know, I'm sorry. And I'll go, no, I'm glad it's that, but it's not about that. It's not, I'll do better. That's not about that. Let's talk about where is the point where you need to remember to be thinking about these things and what could you do to help remind yourself? And we made a plan, which ended up with her being I will set an alarm in my phone right now. And I'm like, wow.
And you gave her the space to come up with that.
Yes.
That's awesome. And how much of that would you say is because your background is as a social worker?
Yeah.
Do you think that it's funny how much stuff has even changed just in the social work field in just the last 10 years, let alone 20 years.
Yep.
So do you think that any of that experience has influenced how you parent now, or do you feel like it's very disconnected?
I think that experience has always influenced how I parented. And I think I have kids that, they're all dual diagnosis in some way or another. Particularly my oldest has gone through just some pretty life-threatening and pretty scary mental health crises. And I used every bit of my social work training. Every single bit, and then had to learn more all the time. And I'm always trying to learn more. but it maxed me out as a parent. And I thought I was so super prepared. And still, I mean, they just surprise you. Sometimes I've learned not to say my kid would never, because like, oh my.
It really is true that like nothing really can fully prepare you for parenthood. Like it's cliche, but I think it's so true. I mean, your background in social work, you worked with sex abuse victims and
Yeah,
incest victims, and like that, in all the areas of social work, that is not light stuff. Like
no.
that is hard stuff to work with.
Yeah, it's super heavy. Yeah. And I did use all the tools of like dealing with emotions and naming them. And I remember a time when my oldest, as a young kid, was, would have like what I called extra feelings of like they were just felt like they were too big. And it's
Mm,
like, okay, let's draw a mad picture, which was pretty much like just scribble all over the page until it was ripped up. And I used all these strategies, but there's just no it's I've had to put the serenity prayer on my fridge for like I don't have any control over the outcome.
mm,
Or how anything goes for them. I have control over my part and what I pour into their life. And you're responsible up until 18, right? So it feels like you're supposed to have some control with that responsibility, but really there is none. There's influence, there's
yeah.
upping the odds, but ultimately no control. And that's a hard thing to try to continually balance and check myself about.
Mm. Before we hit record here today, you came in and you're like, I'm kind of nervous that I'm not going to have anything interesting to share.
Yeah, I did say that.
And so just in the, your recent history, you did a bunch of like political activism. You were involved in Obama for America, right?
Yeah.
You did some stuff when you were in North Carolina. You worked on stuff around the environment. None of this sounds boring.
My life as having stayed mostly home and mostly out of the workforce for quite a while. I mean, it's been a blessing in that I've gotten to do some things that were wonderful to me. In 2008, I got really politically active. I knocked on doors in 3 different states for Obama, got into cars with people I had never met, drove to another state, went to a neighborhood that I had never been in, and knocked on doors where people were like, yeah, people who lived there were like, are you sure you feel safe to be doing this in this neighborhood? And so I was very, very brave. Then I stepped up for the Democratic Party. I showed up to a meeting and my precinct needed a new chair. And I volunteered for that and got elected to it. And I was a precinct chair for like 5 years before I moved. I made sure there were greeters at our polling place. I was usually at the polling place like all day. My husband had set up this little shade tent for me because it's hot down there and I'd sunburn easily. I did a bunch of stuff and helped turn the local town governance, helped flip it to all Democratic seats and the Democratic mayor. It all flipped completely
Wow.
in 5 years. That was a lot other people's doing, and I just got to be part of that team. But it was super exciting.
That sounds
And
exciting.
like signed the town onto the Paris Climate Accords and established family and medical leave for town employees, and it's like a bunch of stuff actually changed.
Even with all of that, is there still a part of you that feels like it's not enough?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I always thought I was going to be this like really. I was very ambitious when I was younger, and I was going to be this high-powered career person because I was precocious and I was bright. I did well in school. I was raised to think that I was supposed to be extraordinary
Mm.
in a way that, like, people would sit up and take note. My mom used to pull stories out of the paper or stories she heard from other people about kids that did these amazing things and would hold them up sort of as examples of. And with my personality, the perfectionism in there, I didn't see that as she's trying to open the world of opportunity. I saw it as she's trying to tell me that that's the level of accomplishment I need to be successful or to be acceptable or approved. or to reach my potential, whatever that is.
So would you say that right now you're sort of in this phase of like sort of grappling with the acceptance of what is actually realistic and what is actually pretty awesome and like having a healthier, balanced idea of striving?
Yes, for sure. And at the same time, I'm really ready to figure out what my next act is going to be and get going on that. I've spent the last year kind of building up my self integrity. It
Mm.
feels like the best word for it. My ability to set my intentions and then have the tools and the support and the compassionate accountability is a huge part of that support, and the self-compassion, because that's another piece that's the harder I am on myself, the more I'm holding myself back. I think I'm
Mm.
spurring myself forward with that like self-criticism, but it doesn't actually, it's the
Isn't it
opposite.
amazing
It just makes me freeze.
that self-compassion is the way forward? And I think when I talk to people about this, when they're kind of newer on the journey, they're like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 like, I have to figure this stuff out. I have things I need to do." And they're like, I know, I know." Like, and like, I wanna help you do those things, and we have to start with self-compassion.
I had one more thing that has been a huge, huge, huge thing this past year. I started a food program that was pretty intense and pretty, people would say restrictive, but I feel actually free with it because I'm not eating sugar and I'm not eating flour and I've not had alcohol since like last July
Wow.
or any kind of sweetener. And I found out about this program through somebody that was in my ARC season and reached out to her and said, "Tell me about this thing that you're doing." And I decided to try the same thing. I had several options, but I decided like, okay, my health is bad. My A1C is not good. My doctor wants to put me on a statin. I'm already on blood pressure medicine, and I was technically in the obese category.
Hmm.
And that was last July, and I
Wow.
went, "You know what? I can do hard things." Because I know that now because I did my ARC season, and I didn't think I had lost my confidence that I could do hard things. But I was like, "I can do this hard thing." And I had compassionate accountability was built into it and planning, like plan my meals the day before as part of the program. And it had so many of the same pieces of what my ADHD brain thrives on now that I'm like, okay, I think this could work for me. And I have done it consistently for, I think I'm at like 225 days now.
Wow.
I am 1 pound from my goal weight. I have lost 46 pounds.
Wow.
And when I shed that last pound, I'll be at the same weight I was in my late 20s, right before I had my first baby. Well, right before I got pregnant. I'll put it that way.
That's gotta feel amazing.
It does.
Whenever I hear people who go like, cut out sugar, I think that's amazing 'cause people say how amazing it feels, like, the first couple days is like hell, and then it feels so good, and I'm like, "Oh my god," like, I just think about all the things that I couldn't have, and I'm like, "Ah." My coffee creamer in my coffee is, like, one of my most joyful daily rituals, and, like, I wish I loved black coffee. I think it's, like, literally it's the one thing that keeps me from, like, trying to go sugar-free is my coffee creamer. It's 'cause I'm telling you, it's that first sip, it's a sip of joy.
I feel like I get to have that joy like every second of the day. I traded those moments of pleasure when whatever it is that hits my tongue or feels satisfying in my stomach. And I traded that for all day long, every minute, feeling comfortable in my body.
It's and the funny thing is how much I actually relate to that because I avoid things that have corn in it, and if you've been to all the middle aisles of the grocery store, like, everything has corn in
Everything,
it, and goes by 100 different names, like, it is out of the things to have a sensitivity to, it is a pain in the ass,
no doubt.
and it's great because I was sick of having, like, hour-long stomach aches every single day,
Yikes.
like, sweating, feeling awful, like I'm gonna vomit, like and it was a corn, and it's just like I would be miserable. All right, looking at the time here, we gotta take one more quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna hear the rest of the story. So we will be right back. Hello, ADHD reWired community. We love having you being a part of our community, and we want to offer you a way to dive even deeper while also supporting the podcast you love. How, you ask? By becoming a patron of the ADHD reWired podcast at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Your support helps us continue to bring you thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and practical strategies to manage and thrive with ADHD. Plus, we created some really awesome perks for our patrons. For only $5 a month, you can enjoy all of our episodes completely uninterrupted. That's right, your favorite ADHD content delivered seamlessly with all the ads bundled up at the end. That's what we call an ADHD-friendly listening experience. And for those of you who want more personalized guidance, we offer a live coaching call with me on the 4th Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. Central. This incredible resource is available for our patrons who contribute $25 a month. But wait, there's more. For just $10 a month, you can get the audio recordings of these coaching calls. Missed a session or want to revisit some of the stuff we talked about? No problem. You can listen anytime. You just set up the RSS feed, which is a special link that you just copy and paste from Patreon into your podcast app, and it shows up as a private podcast just for you. Your support not only gives you these fantastic perks, but it also helps ensure that the ADHD reWired podcast can continue to provide valuable content for everyone affected by ADHD. So why wait? Head on over to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon and become a patron today. Let's continue to journey together on this ADHD reWired road. Because at ADHD reWired, we believe in thriving with ADHD together. All right, we are back. All right, so one of the things that we do in our coaching groups is as we're getting sort of near the last third of group, we're doing the long-term planning. We spend a session working on our bucket lists. And you had some items on your bucket list. What was one of the items that you had on your bucket list?
One of them was to tell a story at a Moth storytelling event. Anyone who's not familiar, they're aired on NPR a lot. It's like the Moth radio hour on NPR.
They're amazing.
But there are storytelling events through the Moth organization all over the country. But where I lived in North Carolina, the closest Moth was 4 hours away. Hadn't made it to that. I had told a story at a local event, and I really value authenticity. And I had these dreams where I was on a stage talking to people. And it was from the heart, and it was with a motivation to help them somehow. And I kept having these dreams. And I thought, I feel like that's something, speaking on stage in front of a microphone is something that it's not something I'm terrified of, but I wouldn't say it's fully in my wheelhouse or my comfort zone either. And when I got an opportunity to first do storytelling, it was something within my church community. I jumped at it because I thought, here is a chance to work on this skill that I somehow feel like I'm supposed to develop. And I don't know why. I still don't know exactly why. Maybe for today. I don't, even though there's no stage. But I really wanted to tell a Moth story. And moving here to Chicago, there is more every other week. So my goal was to go, and you have to put your name in the hat. So you never know. These are called story slams, and they draw. So I had to go prepared to tell a 5-minute story, a true story, not a fictional. It's from your real life. I didn't know if I would get chosen. And the first couple of times I went, I didn't get chosen. But then I did. And I was able to tell a story on the Moth stage. And they have audience judges that judge you on a 10-point scale. So that's kind of a confront, and I just strap my courage boots on, if that's a thing. And I got an average score of 9.4, which I was really pleased with. I didn't win, but the woman who won was a professional who helped other people write their memoirs. So I'm going to say she had a little edge.
Yeah, that seems to not be fair. It's like Michael Jordan going and trying out for high school basketball.
Right. Yeah. So, but I did get approached immediately afterwards by somebody who runs her own storytelling events and has curated events where they choose the storytellers and they know exactly kind of what story, like a curated art exhibit, except it's storytelling. And she recruited me to tell the same story at a curated event, which you already know about because you came to see it.
Which was so exciting. And the time frame to me was also extraordinary. How you set out this your bucket list goal that you identified that's the one you want to do, and within weeks you had already taken like major action on it.
Yeah, I have.
So
I would love to share it.
let's do it.
Okay, so this story was on the theme of birthdays. What to Expect When You're Expecting is one of my all-time favorite books. I am all about being prepared, but I'm not so fond of surprises because they tend to be hard to prepare for. So during my first pregnancy back in the 90s, when I was offered an ultrasound to find out the gender of my baby, I jumped at the chance. When they told me and my husband that we could expect a healthy baby girl, I was relieved. I had grown up surrounded by girls, and I felt way more prepared to raise a daughter. So I happily opened shower gifts of frilly dresses and hair bows, and I painted the nursery pink. I spent months talking to my unseen baby, Rachel, as she grew along with my waistline. Shortly before my due date, my best friend asked how I would feel if it turned out the ultrasound was wrong. I told her, honestly, that I'd be disappointed and worse, unprepared. Let's just say that it's a good thing ultrasound technology improved before gender reveal parties became the rage. Looking back, the play-by-play during my delivery was comical. I can still hear the doctor saying, "I can see the top of your daughter's head. Just a few more pushes and you'll get to meet Rachel. Here she comes. It's a boy." Surprise! I was totally unprepared for the feelings I experienced as I held my newborn child. I wasn't disappointed at all. I was in awe. As I held my baby, I thought, "You're not who I expected, but you're precious exactly as you are." So we chose a new, more masculine sounding name and repainted the nursery. We returned most of the girly shower gifts, but I kept a few. They lived in a box in the attic for 8 years until my third child, Rachel, arrived. For the benefit of my first 2 kids, I read books about raising sons. Eventually, I felt like I knew what I was doing, helping shape my 2 young boys into the men I expected them to become. Then, a few years ago, shortly after my firstborn turned 21, the 2 of us went for a long walk together, and I could just tell something was wrong. Communication had dropped off recently, and I could sense the heaviness and tension of unspoken words between us. Various nightmare scenarios started to race through my mind. Finally, the words came out. "Mom, I need to tell you, I'm non-binary." And I said, "I really appreciate you telling me. It seems like that's really important to you. But I need to ask, what does that mean?" Seriously, I literally had no idea. I hadn't heard the word non-binary before. It sounded like some new computer language. Talk about being unprepared. This was a whole different kind of gender reveal. Surprise, again. I truly wanted to be supportive, but ultimately that's just not possible from a place of ignorance, which is where I was at. So I read and I asked questions and I learned new vocabulary, like non-binary is a gender identity that is neither fully male nor female. And the pronoun they can be correctly used as either singular or plural. And cis is the opposite of trans, not just what I call my sister. And a dead name is the one that we gave our first child after the doctor declared it's a boy. And It's also the name I painstakingly ripped out of a hand-stitched Christmas stocking, and a name I don't say anywhere in this story out of respect for my child's wishes. Over the last few years, there have been a couple more surprises. As soon as we got used to they, them pronouns, that changed to she, her. And eventually, Aria became the new name on the Christmas stocking. It turns out that ultrasound tech totally crushed it because my amazing trans femme child truly was my daughter all along. And I am still in awe of her. I've learned that children have a delightful way of surprising us just by becoming themselves, regardless of our expectations. As a mom of 3 amazing and completely different kids, I've learned so much. I now know gender is a lot more complex than the sex we're assigned at birth, and I've learned it's more important to be open and curious rather than prepared with all the answers. But my main job as a mom has never changed. It's to show each child they are precious and loved exactly as they are. And to Aria, thank you for letting me tell this story and for teaching me to love surprises.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
A beautiful story.
It's a really close one to my heart. When I first started storytelling, I thought of all the different things that I'd like to share, funny things and scary things and joyful things. And this was the story that it's a unique experience to have had those expectations flipped twice with the same kid. And it's a journey that our family has been on. You know, my other 2 kids amaze me. They're just instantly accepting and adapting. And my heart was instantly accepting, but it took my brain a while to start to get the right words to come out of my mouth and to kind of learn how to navigate, how to show support in a way that feels like support to the person you're trying to show it to.
First time I heard it, and again now, I think the thing that touched me so much is just thinking about, so when I was 14, I came out to my parents as bisexual, and times were different then, and they didn't say they were disowning me, but it was not it wasn't the type of response I was hoping for. And so just kind of thinking about and if my parents' response would have been something like yours, on how you responded to your child, how special that is for you and your family, and for Aria, right?
Yeah,
For Aria. Yeah, 'cause I think that was such a gift, that being open and present and acknowledging what you didn't understand, and that's a gift.
And that's not to say I did everything right. I mean, I know that there were things that I did and said that did not feel supportive at the time because I didn't know. Like me trying to say, okay, I feel like it makes sense and would be really comfortable for me if I could just refer to, so I'm saying this to my child, if I could just refer to you in, the masculine gender, if I'm talking about when you were a little kid or when you were a baby, but then I could refer to you in, the feminine gender, like when I'm talking about you in recent history. And she's like, Mom, I know that seems to make sense to you, but that's actually, I feel myself to have been this gender all along, and this is my true self, and that wouldn't feel good to me. That would not feel supportive to me. I want you to always refer to me with she, they pronouns, whether you're thinking of me, at any point in my life.
What a open, beautiful way to converse about something that I'm sure is really hard to talk about. Okay, thank you so much for sharing all of your story and journey that you have today with us. You want to sing us out? Is that a thing you can do?
Oh, man. You're really putting me. I will give a shout out to my other 2 kids because they just, don't tend to be talked about. A 22-year-old, he's this like athletic, really smart, overachieving, like it's like he doesn't know he's the second born. And he's kind of very traditional in his own choices as like a cis straight white male, but he is like just the best possible version of compassion and acceptance and open-mindedness. That part just makes my heart really full as a mom. And my daughter, my 17-year-old, we adopted her when she was a baby from Guatemala. And she is having cultural day at her high school today. And she left the house with her Guatemalan bag and this shirt that we bought for her when we went to Spain, which is like, it's not Guatemalan, but it's Latina. And she's got these Latina boots on. And she's like all about owning her heritage and loving that. And that is really exciting for me too. And I promised her that next time I tell a story about one of my kids, it's going to be about her.
Have you started writing that one yet?
In my head.
Oh, so what's the next step?
Finding a theme that goes with it. The next Moth event, the theme is clumsy. And that's not going to be about my daughter. She dances.
I've just thought of like 9 different stories that can go along with
Did you?
that.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing your name go in that hat.
That actually is something I would love to do. Is there's 3 things. I would love to do the Moth. I would love to do Risk. Do you know Risk?
No.
It's like the risque version of the Moth.
Huh?
And but my other goal that I've had for a while is to do an ADHD rewired sort of version of the Moth, where people tell their ADHD stories, like getting some coaching around the storytelling process and doing it live.
That would be awesome.
I think that'd be so fun. Is there any final thoughts that you want to share before we wrap this one up?
I hope this has been helpful. I told you that intention before we started, that it was to focus not on me or even on you, but just on any aspect of what's happened in my life that could help somebody else. There's just been so much growth from the acceptance that I've given myself and the compassion that I've learned how to give myself. I've had some good help from my therapist in that direction, but just understanding my brain better and how to work with it, and that whole accountability piece for anybody that's dealing with it that doesn't have an accountability partner or accountability team, or somebody who's not your spouse or your partner that you can get to give you that compassionate ass kicking. That's the secret sauce.
Well, Kim, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to hearing your next story and seeing what you do next.
Me too.
Thanks so much. Hello, procrastinators, perfectionists, and project lovers. Have you ever found yourself starting a project with the energy of 1,000 suns, only to see it fizzle out to a barely lit match? Then this is for you. Introducing Finishine, the world's first artificially intelligent assistant dedicated to helping you conquer unfinished projects. We've all been there. The rush of beginning a new project, the excitement of initial progress, and then the slump. Suddenly, that half-finished painting or that 50-page novel you are writing seems about as appealing as last week's leftover lasagna. We should actually probably throw that away now. Finishine is here to help. Using sophisticated AI technology, Finishine learns about your working style, motivation triggers, and the nature of your projects to give you that gentle nudge, or not so gentle nudge, that you need to bring your passion projects to completion. Think of Finishine as your personal project whisperer. It'll help you break down the project into bite-sized pieces, provide a roadmap to the finish line, and keep you on track with personalized reminders and words of encouragement. What's even cooler, Finishine syncs with your smart devices to send helpful prompts and even blocks distracting apps when you really need to buckle down and finish that project. And with Finishine Share, you can post your 50 to 99% completed project on the Finishine Share Exchange and find people just like you to trade projects with. So your nearly finished project becomes someone else's new and novel, exciting project. So say goodbye to unfinished projects and hello to the sweet satisfaction of done. With Finishine, your journey goes from to-do to ta-da. in just a few taps. And while Finishine is not a real product or service, the help and support you hear each week on this podcast is real. And if you're looking for help completing those abandoned projects, check out our virtual co-working community for some light touch accountability, or for an intense full immersion approach, if that's more of your style, check out our coaching and accountability groups for very real support. And registration for our summer groups is going on now. For all things ADHD Rewired, visit us online at ADHDrewired.com. Even if you don't make it to the end of this episode or have never made it to the end of one of our episodes, it's all good. We are glad that you're here. Oh, and if you have an idea for a fake product or service that would solve a real ADHD problem, send me a message using the contact form at ADHDrewired.com. Use the subject line, fake ad idea. That's ADHDrewired.com.